I was standing in my own kitchen, holding a box of photographs that didn't belong to me. And right there on top, in handwriting I'd never seen before, was a letter addressed to my husband. My hands were shaking. Behind me, I could hear Kinsley's car pulling into the driveway for the third time that week, uninvited. And I knew that whatever was in this letter was going to change the way I saw everything. I unfolded it, and the very first line made my stomach drop. My husband's stepsister is obsessed with him and is dead set on stealing him away from me. My name is Nadia. I'm 32, I teach 4th grade at an elementary school, and I have been married to my husband Barrett for just over 3 years. He's the kind of man who remembers how you take your coffee after hearing it once, who fixes things around the house before you even mention they're broken, and who still opens the car door for me even when we're running late. I love him. I loved him from our second date, when he accidentally knocked over an entire glass of water into his own lap and just sat there at himself like it was the funniest thing that had ever happened. I knew right then, this is the one. But loving someone doesn't mean their family is easy. And Barrett's family, specifically his stepsister Kinsley, has been the hardest thing about my marriage. Let me explain how they're connected. Barrett's mother passed away when he was 11. His dad, Hugh, remarried a woman named Diane when Barrett was 15. Diane had a daughter from a previous marriage, Kinsley, who was 13 at the time. So Barrett and Kinsley grew up in the same house for about 3 years before Barrett left for college. They were never close the way biological siblings are, but they were friendly, polite. They'd see each other at holidays, text on birthdays, normal step-sibling stuff. Then, about 14 months ago, Diane died. Ovarian cancer. It was fast. Diagnosis to funeral in under 5 months. Hugh was devastated. Barrett was gutted in a quieter way. He'd loved Diane. She'd been good to him, filled a space in his life that had been empty for years. He gave the eulogy at her funeral, and I watched him stand up there with his jaw tight, holding it together, and I thought, he's going to carry this for a long time. But Kinsley? Kinsley fell apart. I understood that at first. I really did. She lost her mother. That's enormous. She was 28, living alone, working as a dental hygienist, and suddenly the person she was closest to in the world was gone. I had empathy. I made her meals. I called to check on her. When she showed up at our house unannounced the first few times, I opened the door and hugged her and said, "Stay as long as you need." I mean that. I genuinely meant it. But then the weeks turned into months, and the visits didn't slow down. They increased. Sometimes I think compassion has an expiration date, not because you stop caring, but because the person you're caring for starts needing something you were never supposed to give. Kinsley started calling Barrett every single day, sometimes twice. She'd call during dinner, during our evenings together, once at 11:30 at night. Barrett always answered. I'd hear him in the other room, his voice low and patient. I know it's hard. Yeah, I'm here. Then she started showing up. Not just on weekends, on random Tuesday evenings, on mornings when Barrett was about to leave for work. She'd sit at our kitchen island and talk for hours, mostly to Barrett, mostly about Diane. I'd be right there in the room, and she'd look through me like I was furniture. One night she showed up with takeout. Barrett's favorite, this specific noodle dish from a place across town. She walked right past me at the front door, set the bag on the counter, and said, "Barrett, I got that thing you love. 2 orders, one for you and one for me." 2 orders. In my house. At my dinner table. I stood there holding the casserole dish I'd already prepared and felt something hot climb up the back of my neck. "Barrett, do you remember the trip Mom and I took when I was 16? The cabin by the lake?" "Yeah, I remember." She talked about that trip all the time. She said it was her favorite memory. I'd smile and try to join in. That sounds beautiful, Kinsley. She'd glance at me, give a thin smile, and then turn right back to Barrett. Anyway, she also said it was like I didn't exist. I brought it up to Barrett one night after she left. We were getting ready for bed, and I was exhausted. I hadn't been sleeping well for weeks. I'd lie awake at 2, 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction, every look Kinsley gave me, every time Barrett chose her call over our conversation. I'd started getting headaches. My appetite was off. One of my coworkers, a woman named Janine, pulled me aside in the teacher's lounge and said, "Nadia, are you okay? You look like you haven't slept in a month." I told her I was fine. I wasn't fine. "Barrett, can we talk about Kinsley?" He was brushing his teeth. He looked at me in the mirror. "What about her?" "She was here for 4 hours today." "She's going through a hard time." "I know that, but she's here constantly. She calls you all the time. She barely acknowledges me when she's in our house." He rinsed his mouth and turned around. "Nadia, her mom just died. 14 months ago." "Grief doesn't have a deadline." "I'm not saying it does. I'm saying there's a difference between supporting someone and becoming their entire emotional lifeline." He didn't respond to that. He just got into bed, turned off the lamp, and said, "She's my stepsister. She doesn't have anyone else." And that sentence, "she doesn't have anyone else," became the wall I couldn't get past. There was something else going on too, something I hadn't told Barrett yet. I was pregnant. 8 weeks. I'd found out on a Wednesday morning, alone in the bathroom, staring at 2 pink lines while Barrett was already at work. I sat on the edge of the tub for 20 minutes, trying to figure out how I felt. Happy? Terrified? Overwhelmed? I wanted to tell him that night, but then Kinsley called during dinner, and he spent 45 minutes on the phone with her, and by the time he came back, the moment had passed, and I just couldn't. So I carried that secret around for days, then weeks. It sat in my chest like a stone. I told my best friend Opal instead. We've been close since college. She's an occupational therapist, steady and thoughtful, the kind of person who listens before she speaks. "You have to tell Barrett," she said. We were sitting on her back patio. It was a cold afternoon, and I was wrapped in a blanket she'd brought outside for me. "I know. So what's stopping you?" "I don't know. Every time I try, something interrupts. Kinsley calls, Kinsley shows up, Kinsley needs something." Opal was quiet for a moment. "Nadia, have you considered that maybe Kinsley isn't trying to steal Barrett? Maybe she's just drowning?" "I know what drowning looks like, Opal. This isn't drowning. This is moving in." She didn't push it, but I could tell she wasn't fully on my side, and that stung more than I expected. I've learned that when the one person you count on to validate your feelings starts questioning them, it doesn't make you reconsider. It makes you feel more alone. Things escalated the following weekend. Barrett was out running errands, and I was home alone grading papers when I heard a car pull up. I looked out the window. Kinsley. I opened the door. "Hey, Kinsley. Barrett's not here right now." "Oh, I know," she said. "I actually came to drop something off." She was holding a cardboard box. "I've been going through Mom's things. There's some stuff in here that's Barrett's. Old photos, a few letters she wrote. She set the box on the kitchen counter and then just stood there, looking around our house like she was taking inventory. "That's really kind of you," I said. "I'll make sure he gets it." "Some of those letters are personal," she said, "between Mom and Barrett. I'd appreciate it if you didn't read them." The way she said it, the emphasis on personal, the implication that I would intrude on something that wasn't mine, made my face go hot. But I kept my voice steady. "Of course." She left, and I stood in my kitchen staring at that box. I made myself a cup of tea, sat down at the table, looked at the box for probably 10 minutes. Kinsley's voice was still ringing in my ears. Personal. Like I was some outsider who had no right to know what was going on in my own husband's life. I wish I could tell you I didn't open it. But I did. Not because I'm nosy or jealous, because something in my gut told me there was something in that box I needed to see. Call it instinct, call it desperation, call it whatever you want. The photos were mostly old ones. Barrett as a teenager, Diane and Hugh at some anniversary dinner, a few of Kinsley as a kid. Normal family stuff. But at the bottom, tucked inside a yellowed envelope, was a letter. Handwritten. Diane's handwriting, apparently. Neat, slightly slanted to the right. It was dated about 2 months before she died. I unfolded it, and the first line read, "Barrett, I need to ask you something I've never had the courage to say out loud." My heart was pounding. I kept reading. Diane wrote that she was worried about Kinsley, not just about the cancer, but about what would happen after. She said Kinsley had always struggled with attachment, that she'd been in therapy on and off since her early 20s, that she had a pattern of clinging to people and then pushing them away. Diane said she'd always been the buffer, the one who managed Kinsley's intensity, and she was terrified that once she was gone, Kinsley would latch on to Barrett as a replacement. "Please be patient with her," Diane wrote, "but also be careful. She needs professional help, not a surrogate. Don't let her consume your marriage. I've seen her do it to friendships. I've seen her do it to her own father. She doesn't mean harm, but she causes it." I read that letter 3 times. My hands were shaking. Diane had seen this coming. She'd literally warned Barrett. And either he'd never read this letter, or he had, and he'd ignored it. That evening, I set the letter on the kitchen table and waited for him to come home. When he walked in, I pointed at it. "Did you know about this?" He picked it up, read it. His face changed slowly. Not shock, not surprise. Something heavier. Resignation. "Diane gave me a version of this talk," he said quietly. "About a month before she passed. In person." "So you knew? You knew Kinsley had a pattern. You knew Diane was worried, and you still let it get to this point." "I thought I could handle it." "You thought you could handle it by letting her take over our life?" He sat down heavily. "She's Diane's daughter, Nadia. When I look at her, I see the last piece of Diane that's still here. I couldn't just shut her out." "Nobody asked you to shut her out. I asked you to set a boundary, one single boundary, and you wouldn't." We sat in silence for a long time. Then I told him about the pregnancy. All of it. The test, the weeks of silence, the reasons I couldn't find the right moment. His face crumbled. Why didn't you tell me? When, Barrett? When was I supposed to tell you? Between Kinsley's 9 p.m. phone calls and her Saturday morning drop-ins? When was there room for us? He put his head in his hands, and I watched the weight of everything settle on him all at once. 8 weeks? He whispered. Almost 11 now. I've been to the doctor twice. Alone. He looked up at me, and his eyes were red. I should have been there. Yeah, you should have. Nadia, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I don't need you to be sorry, Barrett. I need you to be here. Actually here. Not half here with one ear on your phone waiting for Kinsley's next crisis. He nodded slowly, like a man absorbing a blow he knew he deserved. Looking back, I think that was the moment I realized I hadn't just been competing with Kinsley for Barrett's attention. I'd been grieving the version of my marriage that existed before she moved into the center of it. The next day, Barrett called Kinsley. I sat in the living room and listened. He paced the kitchen the entire time, one hand on the back of his neck, the way he does when he's forcing himself to do something difficult. He was gentle but firm, firmer than I'd ever heard him. Kinsley, I love you. You're family. But I need some space. Nadia and I have things we need to focus on right now, and I haven't been fair to her. I could hear Kinsley's voice through the phone, high and fast. What did she say to you? Barrett, she's turning you against me. She's always been threatened by how close we are. That's not what's happening. Mom would be so hurt if she saw you doing this. Mom asked me to do this. She wrote me a letter. She told me to be careful. Dead silence on the other end. When Kinsley spoke again, her voice was completely different. Fine, if that's how you want it. She hung up. Barrett sat there for a long time, staring at his phone. I could see it on his face. The guilt, the grief, the feeling that he'd just severed something he could never repair. And I wanted to feel relieved. I wanted to feel like we'd won.